Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippy, and welcome back to That Trippy Show with my co-host, Alex Sashlow. This week, Donald Trump's going to war, with California. Actually, it's more than California, but
It's a
Gavin
lot of people,
Newsom's,
man.
Gavin Newsom stepping up to take him on. We'll get into what that all means. Trump's co-opting the military for his own gain, of course. Of course he is. But what are we supposed to do about it? A lot. And let's look ahead to the midterms and beyond. Alex, where do you want to get started?
Well, man, I'll quickly tee up what's going on in LA, which, as you pointed out pre-show, I think most listeners should probably be pretty familiar with what's going on. But I really want to dig into what Trump's doing, what the response is. Obviously, this all started from the anti-ICE protests that have been ongoing around the country. Went to one in Chicago yesterday, 2 days ago now, as people are recording this. Trump decided, hell with it. I'm going to send in the National Guard, send over a few thousand troops and some active duty Marines.
700, yeah.
Joe, I saw, I think a reporter was shot, and there's some questioning about whether it was intentional or not with a rubber bullet. CNN's claiming their reporters have been detained. CNN's claiming their reporters have been detained. They have been. But the one that really got me beyond the Trump stuff was Kristi Noem got on CNN. And again, the Senate confirmed Secretary for Homeland Security and claimed that all these protesters were crisis actors, saying they're paid protesters. It's professionally done, which again, that's a page out of, I'm pretty sure that bankrupted, what's his face, right? Didn't that bankrupt Alex Jones?
Yeah, the thing here, though, is that what's fascinating about all this is that it's about 4 square blocks in Los Angeles and 2 federal buildings. That's it. It's the reporting, the coverage, of course, is going to be any burning cars and all that stuff, but it's all literally happening within 4 square blocks and two. And the guard is National Guard, and all this is in the protests are happening in 4 square blocks, two and around 2 federal buildings. And that, my friends, is not an insurrection. It's not anything that the LAP, having grown up in Los Angeles and lived through the riots that were real citywide in the 60s. No, the state of California, the city of Los Angeles, the LAPD is fully capable, and I think it has shown that with
Yeah.
curfews and everything else, to handle this situation. But instead, we have a president who, instead of trying to, calm people down, is stoking it with everything he's got, and his
Yeah,
administration
that's not really
is
his
as
thing,
well.
man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, his quotes are just off. We would expect it from him. He said, if you didn't attack this one very strongly, you'd have them all over the country. But I can inform the rest of the country that when they do it, and if they do it, they are going to be met with equal or greater force that we met right here. We will liberate Los Angeles. We're talking about 4 blocks, folks. We're talking about 2 buildings that have not been, they haven't been taken siege or anything. But it's just, he continues to just stoke this. We are going to have troops everywhere. This is the next step to move towards the police state he wants absolute power over. It starts with picking up people and shipping them to El Salvador without any
Due
due
process
process,
whatsoever.
nothing,
Yeah.
nothing. It gets to, basically calling a peaceful demonstration an insurrection. Yes, violence occurred, but there's no one who, I mean, most of these, particularly during the day, these are peaceful protests. The city has placed a curfew on these blocks in the evening. The LAPD can handle this, but no, my friends, Donald Trump is stoking the flames and telling everybody we're going to have these people, the troops on the streets everywhere, across the country if he needs to. They want to call this an insurrection. He wants to declare a state of emergency. He wants to get to martial law. And eventually, that's what we have to be doing here. June 14th, there will be no King's protests all across the country. You need to be there. You need to get your friends to be there. You need to take somebody else and be there. Don't let these Los Angeles protesters stand alone. Stand with them. Stand against this. And by the way, I mean, the Democratic Party, we're literally on the cusp here of the president continuing to move in the direction that we all feared he would. It's chaos. It's moving to autocracy and to, again, I mean, he literally has put 700 Marines, U.S. Marines, on alert to go in, to potentially go into an American city. And so we need to stand in protest everywhere and peacefully. And look, there's rules we should all be about. It's pretty simple. If you're in a peaceful protest and some kind of violence breaks out, somebody throws the rocks, anything like that happens, everybody at the protest should sit down. Just sit down, put your signs down, and let the law enforcement see the people that are actually doing the violence. That's what's important. There's so few of them, and many of them, are just not obviously trying to sort of, take the peaceful protest and turn it into their, into their violent, whether it's looting, whatever. It doesn't matter. We're not. That's not what we're about. So we have to stand together. And when you see violence, if you're there, sit down. Let the LAPD or whoever deal with it in your jurisdiction. The local law enforcement will do what needs to be done. And I think every Democrat needs to say this. And by the way, while all this is going on, I'm a Democrat, but it seems to me that the party talking about what its message is going to be, who our new leader is going to be, it's kind of like at the moment we are in the country right now, it's literally not rearranging the chairs on the Titanic, but actually sitting down and talking about how we're going to fix the deck chairs on the Titanic while the ship is taking on water, and the ship's America. And so, look, I just think the at every one of these No Kings rallies, every Democratic incumbent, every Democratic challenger should be there. And we need to put the heat on the Republican representatives and senators and ask and go to their offices and demand to know whether they stand for this or with us. And I just think, this is that moment. This isn't any kind of time to look the other way or even just see the stupidity and humor of how stupid Trump and Noam and these people are being. This is serious. They mean it. He wants this and he wants to stoke it. And Stephen Miller wants desperately for this to turn in to something they can call a rebellion, an insurrection that demands, that lets the president, gives him an excuse to order the troops, American troops, onto U.S. soil. That's such a rare event. And in fact, maybe the Civil War, but no. And even in Alabama in the 60s, it was to protect the citizens against a governor who is taking their rights away. This is the exact opposite. It's a president we're not rebelling or breaking the law. We're protesting peacefully against a president who's breaking the law and wrecking the Constitution.
I mean, this is so different than the other. I mean, over the years, Democrats and the left have tried with the whole abolish ICE thing, but this is not that. This is literally protests against illegal kidnappings of American citizens without due
Yeah.
process and sending them to jails in El Salvador. It's not
And other places.
in other places, yeah.
We're discovering new gulags all the time. But like, so Gavin Newsom, I mean, this is what Democrats need to do. He said democracy's under assault before our eyes. This moment we have feared has arrived. We have to call this out. We have to call it what it is. He said that Trump is taking a wrecking ball to our founding fathers' historic project, three co-equal branches of independent government. There are no longer any checks and balances. What Donald Trump wants most is your fealty, your silence, to be complicit in this moment. Do not give in to him. We need every Democrat out there courageously making these statements and leading the movement to stop this. The movement has to grow at the grassroots from the bottom up. But the Democratic Party has to rise. And it's not to defend democracy, it's to reinvent it. It's to make it actually start working for people. But this, breaking the law, abducting American citizens, no due process, putting troops on the street, calling in the National Guard without the governor or the locality or the LAPD asking for it, requesting it, which is how it's always been done. And I don't know, it's always been done. Oh, there you go, talking about doing things normally. No, it's that this is so abnormal and it's so clear what the motivation is that, LA is not burning. It's 4 blocks, it's 2 buildings. I'm telling you, growing up in LA, the LAPD, the LA Fire Department, local DAs, they can handle this. And the state has pretty good highway patrol and other forces that can do it too. There's no need for the National Guard. And the person who should have made that request, if it was needed, was Gavin Newsom. And he's telling you exactly what this is. This isn't a president trying to help save the city of Los Angeles and save the city. This is a president determined to put democracy under direct assault right before our eyes, and that the moment we have feared has arrived. That's Gavin Newsom. I mean, the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass. I think we're an experiment because if you can do this to the nation's second largest city, maybe the administration is hoping that this will be a signal to everybody elsewhere to fear them. That's
Yep,
exactly
that's
what this
exactly it.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
and what do you say? Okay, so you got the governor, you got the mayor, but you got, I'm gonna just ballpark from recent data, somewhere between 56 and 60% of Americans overall think the whole ignoring due process thing is pretty bad. But there's a pretty big chunk of America, Joe, who will hear something like what Gavin Newsom's saying, what Karen Bass is saying, what you're saying, and say, it's an exaggeration. This isn't what Trump's trying to do. This isn't what Trump's going to do. You're overreacting, right? How do we
No, the
get to them?
exaggeration is that California and Los Angeles are burning, and that if they didn't send in the 4,000 national, didn't call up the National Guard, California, LA would be lost. That's
Right,
the
right.
exaggeration.
So how do we get to the people who think that most of LA is on fire? Which, by the way, it recently was. Get to that in a minute.
Well, no, but look, you're not going to convince people that most of LA is not on fire. Why? Because even CNN, that's the only, hey, if it bleeds, it leads. Guess what all the video footage is of? Right? It's of, 4 burning cars. And by the way, most of the burning cars that are being pushed around on social media are from riots in the years ago and have nothing to do with the demonstrations that are going on in Los Angeles. No, it's to the counter narrative has to be made by anybody by the Adam Kinzingers, the Gavin Newsoms, any of the elected Democrats or challengers out there. It's not going to be made by any of the Republicans in the House or the Senate. We need to hold their feet to the fire because the pressure of 5,000 people outside of one member's office, and that's what we need to start to get to, will make them cave. I've said this before. Trump wants us to fear him and MAGA. The members of the Congress on the Republican side in the House have to start fearing us in a general election. And this, look, maybe the American people just don't care. Maybe this is acceptable to them and they won't respond when each of us talks to our friends and our coworkers and our family and tells them and asks them to go with us. But I think this is the beginning of the movement to not just to defeat this, but to create a renaissance and a reinvention of democracy so it works for people and to stand up against this, against the slide to chaos and autocracy that is rising all over the world, not just here. Well, it starts here. We have to be the people. If we won't stand up to this, there are very few people elsewhere who will or will be able to without us being there for them.
I was a fan of what Doechii, who's a rapper who just won a first Grammy, who said, I think at the BET Awards, which were in LA, she said, I do want to address what's happening right now outside the building. There are ruthless attacks creating fear and chaos in our communities in the name of law and order. Trump is using military forces to stop a protest. And I want you all to consider what kind of government it appears to be when every time we exercise our democratic right to protest, the military is deployed against us. And that's not a politician. That's a young
No,
black woman talking to an audience of, by the way, mostly young black voters who pay attention to this kind of stuff. And those are the kind of things everybody's got to use their platform. Everybody's got to call them out. It, but man, I did think, didn't he? I just going back, I want to say there was something way more violent fairly recently that he did call the National Guard in when he was begged to do so. Did he not activate the National Guard on January 6th? I'm just saying.
no. I mean, this is the whole thing is he wants absolute power. And that's something, it again gets to what I was saying about the Democratic Party right now. I mean, I've said this before, no party was prepared for the assault on the media, on the country, on the Constitution, on the courts, on the media, on all of it. And to break out of the, pingent to start rebuilding for the next election, 2026, all that stuff is very real. But, okay, a 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, it's 6 months. And it's not about a new leader hasn't emerged. It's about changing. The party has to change its mindset. It cannot remain a party. It must lead a movement. And that movement has to be powered from the bottom up, but it has to be led. It won't happen from the Republican side. It has to be the Democratic Party building a big tent, not around any specific ideology other than stopping, literally protecting and preserving not our institutions. They need to be reformed, but the ideals and the values and the Constitution and fighting for those. And at the same time, leading the movement towards what has to be the reinvention of democracy. Democracy is itself is it's kind of fading as an idea, not because of the ideals that were instilled in democracy, but because the systems of democracy don't work. And with all the technological change, everything that's coming at people so fast, it needs to be reinvented. The one thing I can tell you is it's clear to me now that no matter what, Trump has wrecked enough of America as we know it that there's no going back. The status quo is now dead. And the Democratic Party best understand that this is now a fight, a race to build a counter movement to Trump and to Elon, and whether in their fighting is just distraction, but to all of it, and to rise up and to call on the American people, to rally them, to protest peacefully, to stand up at every turn and across all of it, the legal community, the business community, the celebrities, all of it, stand up to this, understanding that we will never be the country we were. We will have to reinvent democracy. And that will mean understanding that democracy itself is helping to the party structures help keep us polarized. Everything about the way we conduct our politics keeps us polarized, that the autocrats understand that and use it, use the weakness of democracy to kill it. And we're going to have to think hard about that's the party we need right now. Not one, like I said, I've been on a lot of, and you have too, Alex, Zooms and things talking about the need to rethink the party's message, look at leadership, et cetera. Yeah, it's like, we are watching without like getting I mean, we're not on the same level of the fight that we're in. It's not a fight about the next election or what the party's message is going to be. This is a fight for democracy itself. And I don't mean democracy, everybody gets a vote. I'm talking about the Constitution of the United States and the rule of law and the to protect people. You can pick up anybody on the street and ship them out. That's like getting, and then put military forces and then call it the National Guard anytime he wants. That's not America, my friends. And that's what we have to fight for. And the party has to decide and change its mindset from being a party to leading a movement.
What do you think about instead of saying defending democracy, defending the Constitution? You think that does anything?
Look, I think people are starting to get, I mean, first of all, you're seeing it in, everybody said, like, don't talk about democracy, don't talk about democracy. Well, it's hard to defend something you want to talk about. I mean, we've got to make the case here that, look, you can have an autocrat who makes the rules, who calls out the troops, who decides who's broken the law, by the way, who uses the law and the Justice Department, tell even the military to go after his enemies, the people he doesn't like. Or we can build a future where, yeah, it's not perfect, but there's a hope that the people will still get to decide what that future is with their voice and with their ability to lift representatives that will change all this. It's us. Either we, no, look, I think that the problem we have now is that one party is led by an autocrat who wants absolute power for himself and doesn't give a crap about anybody but himself and those and rewarding those most loyal around him. And the other party still thinks we're in an election fight and not a fight for literally, we're in an existential fight for America, for the country we have known. And what I'm saying is it's gone. It's gone. We have to rebuild it. We have to reinvent it. We have to reinvent democracy itself when we come out of these ashes of the Trump and destructive forces that he's literally, lobbing everywhere. There's going to be the damage is not going to be, it's going to change everything in a way. We're having a major structural shift in technology, AI, all that stuff. It's coming. And that means that going back to the old institutions that are now burning and going back to systems that weren't working is not the way. Destroying them isn't the way out of this, but that damage is going to be pretty substantial. It's not going to be to rebuild them the way they were. It's going to be to reinvent them. And that means the people have to be involved in that reinvention. And either the Democratic Party realizes its job isn't to be a party, to think of itself that way, but to lead that movement, to stop this, to stand against it, to urge the American people to stand in nonviolent protest, to be at the protests, encourage people to help people learn how to protest nonviolently and what to do when violence breaks out and denounce it. These are all things we need to be speaking out as a party, but as a movement, because that's the only way. Their movement is now just churning literally unchallenged, except for the courts for the most part, are trying to hold some lines, but that's a very slow process. No, it's the American people. Either we don't care enough or we do. And if this doesn't get enough Americans to understand that, no, it is on the line, that all that talk about democracy really does matter. And yeah, it's not perfect. It's got flaws, obviously, but it's a hell of a lot better than all the other alternatives out there, and certainly better than Donald Trump and Stephen Miller and what you're seeing them do to stoke the flames of Los Angeles and to try to create the press, the ground, prepare the ground so that they can claim they're putting down an insurrection that's rising across the country.
Joe, I think we have a bunch more to get to, but that can wait. I think we're just about out of time. I think that's a great place for us to wrap today.
Okay. Look, folks, this one is, I really do think that we're at a moment where everything I've been saying for, I don't know, the last year, find one friend, one coworker, one family member, get them to understand what's happening. Send this podcast to them, or Lincoln Square, or, posts on Says Us. We've got to build the counter to this thing. I hope you'll be out there on June 14th at No Kings rallies, and we'll put a link in the show notes on how you can find out where one might be close to you. But just don't go by yourself. Bring a friend. Bring people. We got to grow this movement and show up in big numbers every time from now on. Remember that Says Us is live. That's a civil social network for real human beings, which is something I also talk about. We've been flattened. The social networks that exist, they've made us into binary beings. Like we like, dislike, follow, unfollow. We're blue and red. No, we're people. We're much more nuanced and in a big, rich fabric than all that. And we're trying to build a social network that's pro-democracy. It Says Us. So I hope you'll give that a shot and join us. We'll be posting more over on our Substack at Trippy's Take. Alex, I know you have a piece coming out, and I'll be writing some more as well. And go check out joetrippy.substack.com. Stay tuned. This podcast will always be free and is part of Lincoln Square. Check out the latest at lincolnsquare.media. Please subscribe to That Trippy Show and leave a review on Apple or wherever you listen. Thank you. Get out there, folks. We need you.